Hey, I'm Scott from Watchuseek, and today we're going to be looking at 5 classic chronographs. So what started this whole process of me putting together some chronographs is I was reading about the Paul Newman, and everybody's speculating on the price of how much this is actually going to be auctioned off for. And when you start looking at the price of vintage watches, they just keep going up, and the Daytonas and the vintage Speedmasters. So I thought, well, are there some watches, specifically chronographs, that might be considered a classic chronograph that you could go into an authorized dealer and walk out with one of these watches with a warranty and, have it be part of your life and perhaps your children's life. So I know this is a brief overview. It doesn't cover every single watch out there, and I'm sure there's watches that I've missed. So please leave them in the comments below. And these watches, some of these watches I've talked about, people have written books, huge books, just on the specifics of a single watch in this list. So I am just doing a brief overview of some of the watches. So without further ado, let's get in the video. Well, let's just start things off with the Rolex. So here we have the Rolex Chronograph Daytona. Very, very famous watch. It's named after the endurance race, the 24-hour endurance race that's held in Daytona, Florida. It was first introduced in 1963, and it was really designed for professional race car drivers. This watch comes in a 40 millimeter case, of course made out of 904L stainless steel. And there's a variety of different case materials, everything, stainless steel, white gold, yellow gold, steel and yellow gold mix, and Everose gold, and even a platinum. New for last year is putting the tachymeter on a ceramic bezel rather than being engraved into the stainless steel. And the stainless steel models come in 2 different dial colors. You can get a white dial and a black dial. They both have applied markers. And the sub-registers, you've got the chronograph minutes at 3 o'clock. You have the 12-hour counter at 9 o'clock. And then time running seconds down at 6. And the chronograph seconds is centrally mounted. Nice, beautiful, long second counter with an arrow. And just like the crown, the chrono pushers are screw down, so a little interesting for a chronograph. Now there's been 3 different movements that have been used by the Daytona. We go back to a Valjoux, then there was a Zenith El Primer, heavily modified, and then in 2000, Rolex produced their own movement. It was their first in-house chronograph movement. It's the 4130. It's a self-winding mechanical chronograph. It has a power reserve of 72 hours. It has cost certification, and it is a column wheel with a vertical clutch. And Rolex really designed this to be robust, reliable, and highly serviceable. You can take the mainspring and replace it without having to tear down the movement. So they've minimized the parts count. They've even minimized the different types of screws that are used in the movement. So not only is it something that was designed for, of course, the end user to have a robust movement, but also for the longevity of the watch by making it very serviceable. So this Rolex Daytona in stainless steel is an expensive watch. It's $12,400. But the way I'm looking at it, or going to try and look at it, is if I wear it for 20 years and my child wears it for 40 years, that's only about $200 a year. So next we have the TAG Heuer Monaco. Now Monaco came out in 1969 and the name is honoring the Monaco Grand Prix. When it was launched, it was the first water-resistant square automatic chronograph. And the Monaco is forever linked to this guy, Steve McQueen. So Steve McQueen wore it in the 1971 film Le Mans. And in 1998, when TAG Heuer relaunched the series, they called upon Chad McQueen to be able to use photos of his dad wearing the Monaco. So we are forever linked now with Steve McQueen and the Monaco watch. So let's get on to the watch. So the Monaco comes in at 39 millimeters by 39 millimeters. It's a brushed and polished steel case, has a 100-meter water resistance with a sapphire crystal, has a really pretty matte blue dial with polished horizontal faceted indexes. You can see them down there at 5 and 7 and up there at 1 and 11. It's kind of interesting the way they're horizontal there. The pushers are at 2 and 4 with the crown at 9. It's a new thing, this automatic chronograph, so why would you need to use the crown? So they kind of put it onto the other side. This watch here comes on a black perforated strap, really ties into the whole racing feel. I really like the little red markers at each hour. It just gives a little pop of color on that blue. The little round dots, those are lume dots. There is also a red chronograph seconds with red accents on the hands. You have a running seconds at 3 o'clock and you have a 30-minute counter at 9 o'clock for the chronograph. Now let's talk about the movement. So originally the Monaco came out with a movement called the Caliber 11, and the Caliber 11 was one of the first automatic chronograph movements. The one that's in the current Monaco is coincidentally called the Caliber 11, and it is a Sellita automatic with a module that handles all the chronograph functions. And this has a power reserve of 40 hours. And so I think this is a classic for a couple reasons. First and foremost is the design, the K shape. It's really iconic. Then you tie it into Formula One with Monaco, and then Le Mans, the movie, and of course, Mr. Cool Steve McQueen himself. So once again, this is the Monaco by Tag Heuer. Next, we have the Zenith Chronomaster El Primer 38. There's been a lot of debate about who created the first automatic chronograph, and one thing you can say about the Zenith El Primer is the first Swiss-made integrated chronograph to come to market. And that was back in 1969. Now Zenith makes a wide variety of El Primeros. The one we're going to look at today is the 38, and it's made in the same case dimensions and shape as the original from 1969. Now the first thing you probably notice is the tri-color for the sub-registers. Once you wear it for a while, you get to associate a color with the specific function. So you have at 9 o'clock, you have the running seconds. Down at the 6 o'clock position in white, you have the hours. And then at the 3 o'clock with the dark gray, you have the minute counter. And the chronograph seconds is handled by a centrally located red seconds hand. It has a lovely star-shaped Zenith logo for the counterbalance. And the one thing that really separates the El Primero from most other movements out there is that the El Primero beats at 36,000 vibrations per hour. And what that gives you is an incredibly smooth sweep on that seconds hand. And even with the high beat movement using up a bunch of your energy, somehow Zenith managed to give this movement a 50-hour power reserve. It has a column wheel with a vertical clutch, and an interesting story about the movement is that it almost didn't make it out of the 70s. But that's for a whole nother video. So the Zenith El Primer 38 comes in at $6,700 US. So this is a pretty cool watch with a movement that's been around for almost 50 years. It has that lovely high beat, super smooth sweep on the seconds hands. It's a functional design, easy to read the sub-registers, and a nice, refreshingly retro size. So this is the Brightly Navitimer 01. And so this is, unlike the Zenith that we just looked at, on the larger side. This is 43 millimeters, and this was designed in 1952 as a tool watch. The bezel is a slide rule bezel that was designed for pilots and navigators so they could do calculations while they were flying. You could figure out your fuel consumptions, average speeds, among many different things. So this was designed from the get-go as a very purposeful watch. So you see all the slide rule numbers on the rotating bezel, and then inside that on the dial. And then we have a reverse panda here with a black dial and then the white sub-registers. So we have a 30-minute counter at 3, we have a 12-hour counter at 6, and then running seconds at 9. The date is at 4:30, and then the chronograph seconds is in the center, the red second hand, with a really cool logo, the B with the anchor there is the counterweight for that. So once you kind of get past all the numbers on the bezel, it's very easy to read with the black dial and the silver hands there. An interesting note too is the pump pushers that you see there at 2 and 4. Breitling was the first brand to put that design in a chronograph use. Previous designs, you would use the crown to stop-start the chronograph. And continuing along with the tool watch design, the solid case back has a temperature conversion table where you can see the Celsius and the Fahrenheit. I could have used that a few times talking to out-of-towners about how hot it gets in Texas. Now in the past, the Navitimer has used a variety of different movements, from the Venus to the Valjoux to even the Caliber 11, which we talked about earlier in the Tag Heuer. But in 2009, Breitling introduced the B01, which is an automatic mechanical movement. They were working on it for 5 years, and from the very get-go, this movement was designed to overcome some of the chronograph issues of serviceability and reliability. It was designed to be a robust, very serviceable movement. So the Breitling Navitimer 01 comes in at $8,590 US, and I really do think this is an iconic design. People looking over and seeing that watch on somebody's wrist, they know right away that that's a Breitling. And you get that iconic design with a modern in-house movement, right? It's reliable, it's robust. And then to top it all off, you get a slide rule. And I am a sucker for a mechanical device that was designed to do a job. And this truly, I believe, is a tool watch. So once again, the Breitling Navitimer 01. So this is the Omega Speedmaster Professional Moon Watch. Now this watch was introduced in 1957, and a lot of people think, well, that was designed for NASA. Well, not really. It was designed for race car drivers. There is a tachymeter scale on the bezel, which was used by race car drivers to see how fast they were going. But NASA in the 60s, flight approved it to go to the moon. So it is forever in our psyche to be associated with the moon and being part of NASA. So this is a manual wind chronograph. The dial is incredibly easy to read. I mean, it's business. It's black and white. There's no color. I mean, it's just black and white. You have the 30 minutes at 3 over there. You've got the hour counter at 6, and then you have running seconds at 9. The hands are really nice. They're long, so it's easy to see the minutes and the hours, but they're fairly thin. So as they're going over the sub-registers, they don't cover it. I have a problem with a lot of chronographs to where the hour or the minute hand covers up the chronograph sub-registers. I love the design, the shape of that seconds hands with that fine point going into the loom-filled arrow there and then widening out to a lovely counterbalance. You have loom-filled markers for the hour as well as loom-filled in the hands. Now the case shape is very unique. So on the side, the crown side, it is wider than on the other side. So we have an asymmetrical case, and what it does is the case itself becomes the crown and the pusher guards. Really a truly iconic shape. So the movement that is used in this moon watch is the caliber 1861. There has been 3 different movements, all based pretty much on the same concept, which was a Lemania. It was 321, then we went into an 861, and then from 1996 on, we have currently what's in use, the 1861. And this movement is cam actuated with a lateral clutch. It has a 48-hour power reserve. And when you kind of think about, the 1861, close cousin to the 861, very similar, it's been in use in Speedmasters for almost 50 years. So, killer movement. So the Omega Speedmaster Professional Moon Watch, and this is the version with the Hesalite crystal and a solid case back, retails for $5,250 USD. And this watch is so easy to read. I mean, it does exactly what it's supposed to do. I can tell time, read the chronograph. The case is killer. It adds a little bit of style, if you will, to the tool watch thing with the polished and the twisting lugs and the brush sides. And I'm not going to be an astronaut, but this watch brings back memories of the early 70s when I was in my elementary school library reading everything I could find about NASA and the X-15 and the Apollo program. So definitely there's an emotional feeling to a watch like this. So once again, this is the Omega Speedmaster Professional Moon Watch. Hey, thanks for watching. It's fun to put these videos together and talking with colleagues to try and figure out what watch should be included or perhaps shouldn't be included. So I'd love to hear your comments, so leave the comments below. And if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. And be sure to subscribe to Watchuseek to keep track of all the videos that we'll be coming out with. May you wear your watch in good health, and thanks for watching.